6 p.m. and I'm calling to order the Halifax School Committee meeting. And this meeting is being recorded. If anyone is intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting, please notify me at this time. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there is an executive session we have to hold before we have the rest of the meeting. I just want to explain, if we could move it to the end of the meeting, we would, so that you don't have to, because we need to leave to do the executive session. But we're going to leave, so you don't have to vacate here. But I just need someone to make a motion to go into executive session and come back to regular session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to MGL C30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for contract negotiations, A, Halifax Teachers Association, and executive session pursuant to MGL C30A S21A7 to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law. Approval executive session minutes on November 25th, 2025, and return to open session.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And myself as well. Whoever from the HTA is coming. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge anyone that would like to speak. And just a reminder that the comments are limited to 3 minutes. But if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay. I guess we'll start on right and go to left. Can you also state your name?
My name's Robert Mullen. Do you need my address or no?
I don't think so, because we're
Okay, cool.
in town.
I currently have one child here at AGS and 2 children that are now at the middle school. I'm here speaking as a concerned parent and a town resident. Over the recent years, the cost of living has gone up everywhere. It's inevitable that this financial strain has affected our schools. In an effort to minimize the financial strain on residents, the town and school district has asked departments to look at budgets and make cuts where they can. My concern is, are we cutting from the school budget appropriately and looking at all viable options in areas to pull resources from? And how will these cuts impact our children? I've heard townspeople step up and ask about shifting money that is in reserves to help bridge the financial gap, but it seems these questions are not being answered. This will help parents and taxpayers feel the current school committee members understand the town's finances. As a current member of the school council, we discuss the budget prices at our meetings. We don't have the authority to make decisions or alter how the budget is presented. We offer suggestions that we think may help the school move forward, potentially with less impact than what we're currently facing. A few examples being charge for school buses, as most surrounding districts do, and/or charge for kindergarten. We look for small solutions before cutting teachers and programs. In my boys' class of 2029 classroom sizes, they had 25 and 26 students per teacher. We were told it was one of the largest classes the school had seen in years. Parents were frustrated at these class sizes, demanding changes be made to the structure of each grade level to take teachers from another grade to make the class sizes smaller. This is familiar to at least one of the school council members, as they too had children in the class and were part of the above-mentioned suggestion. Now we're seeing voting to increase class sizes to 34 and cut our teachers and specialist programs. Imagine a class with 34 children when we thought 26 was too much. I'm sure being on the school committee is no easy task. I'm asking that you put yourselves back in the shoes of the current parents of current students here at AGS. I don't know how children can learn in the proposed atmosphere. It will be an impossible task for the teachers. It's unfortunate that last year's budget was cut more than it was needed. As you mentioned last month, we could have had more support in the school for the kids attending, making a daily impact on their lives. Please consider all options and think outside the box so our children have good school experiences and our educators want to stay teaching in this town. Think about your place of employment and if you're a teacher in a different district. What if your position was being cut? You'd be just as frustrated as the teacher sitting here. I'm just about done, I promise.
Okay.
All I ask is that you take time to ask yourself, did we truly explore every possibility? Is there any value to any suggestion being made? We are blessed to have the teachers that we do. Each and every one of them put our children first. We owe it to them and their dedication to turn over every stone, find ways to keep them before cutting them and losing them to different districts. Thank you.
Thank you guys, thank you so much, and thank you to the school committee for allowing people to speak today. My name is Tara Pinello. I am up here today as someone who, alongside so many others, is ready to step up, take action, and really help address the school funding crisis. I mean, look at this beautiful room. I feel like I'm in like a school assembly. But in order to really do that effectively, we really need two things. And Robert, you kind of mentioned a little bit of it. We need clarity, we need transparency, we need education. We know the budget is stretched. We know that we need to rally the community, but what many don't fully understand and what the community really needs to know is how we got here. What is being done right now to address the devastating cuts to our school in the fall, but also what is being done and being talked about and being addressed to fix this problem long term. What have you all considered? How did you get to the decisions that you made today that you'll put in front of us? Who have you met with? Have you discussed this across districts, across departments within the town? What options were on the table that aren't on the table anymore, and why? These are all really important questions to help us understand the full picture of what is happening, to help the community understand. I will say it over and over and over again. I said at the last meeting, a strong school system is the strong foundation of a strong town. Without a strong school system, the children will suffer and the community will weaken. But without these really laid out facts, without honest and a clear breakdown and transparency and clarity of what financial mess this is in, you guys didn't cause this. I understand this is a mixture of so many different things. Like, we cannot rally the community effectively. We can't help people understand what this issue is. I know from the last Board of Selectmen meeting, additional meetings will be held likely in the April-May timeframe to help educate the budget. We also have a dedicated group of volunteers ready to spread awareness, ready to advocate for this amazing school. I'm gonna cry, advocate for these amazing teachers and these kids and these future kids, but we need this transparency, we need education, we need to understand. Just share as much as you can. Help us help you. Jerry Maguire, I'm sorry I had to say it. Help us help you. I have never been more concerned about education than I am for my kids going into the school this fall. I had a fourth grader that went into kindergarten during COVID. I mentioned this in another meeting. I was so confident her going into school that year because of the teachers in this room and because the school had the support services that these children needed. I am deeply concerned about these kids coming in. And again, this is not a fault of the school. It's not a fault of the teachers. It's not a fault of the curriculum. It's because of the financial situation this town is in. And the kids are going to suffer for it. So just help us help you guys. Let's truly work together over the next few months to really make this happen. Thank you.
Hi everybody, Catherine Snyder. I'm back again as a concerned parent. And listen, as Tara just said, we don't envy your position. We thank you and we know this is not easy. And, what we ask is that you listen and consider what we're saying. So piggybacking off of Tara, there's so many people in this community here tonight, in the community, that want to help. And we think the best way is to know information, get information between now and May, so we can all go to the town meeting in May and make an informed decision. So I have a few questions that I put together based off of feedback from parents, teachers, and a couple meetings I've attended. I happened to email all 5 of you today, and I'm just going to run through them. If you can hopefully answer either tonight or in a quick fashion, we would appreciate it. Our numbers run for the buses, as Robert said, to charge for buses. Last meeting we discussed kindergarten, where numbers run. Where do we stand with that? Is there a new curriculum being discussed? I've heard a few times that new curriculum. No offense, but why are we cutting teachers and thinking about a new curriculum when we're above average? We got to think about these things. Can we slash unnecessary professional development? Our teachers are super great. Can we push that off for a year? Why have there been no cuts at the high school, and how is the Silver Lake Band-Aid, how are we going to be affected next year when basically it sounds like we're going to have another override? Can someone clearly outline the next steps for the budget process, including the steps if the override is not met? Can we get clarity on how we got here? As Tara said, there's a lot of questions in the town how this happened, and if we're going to go door to door, we need to inform our neighbors and our friends, how did we get here? At what point would the state take over our school, and what does that mean for our school? So while I certainly don't have the answers, I'm not sure anyone in this room has the answers, but our community needs to come together. Bottom line, we are in a very, very bad spot as a town. Whoever doesn't think so, I'd love to hear why. We are talking about spending significant legal fees in the last Board of Selectmen meeting on the MBTA zoning issue while we're slashing our children's education. I understand there's always going to be opposing opinions on how we spend money, but you have to remember there's consequences to the decisions we make. So while I'm here on behalf of my children and the other children in this town, I also encourage you to think about what it means for our town, our property values. Why would somebody want to move here? If our school and our education, why would young families want to move here? And honestly, why would I and my family want to stay here? So I love all you guys in this room, all the teachers. I want to stay here, but we have to do something in this town to better everything. So we got to come together. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yep.
I get upset. I don't have prepared notes, so I'm just going to be extemporaneous. My wife and I have spent our whole lives teaching. We're probably together 80, 90 years. And I'm looking around the room, a lot of old folks here. Obviously, we don't have any kids. My son's 50-something years old. But I feel very strongly about what I heard, and it's a shame. We shouldn't have to do this, We really should. But it's a blowback from a lot of things that are going on in this country right now. I want to make that point. It's talking about eliminating the Department of Education. That's how crazy it's getting. And so the rest of us have to pick up the slack, right? Yeah. And I'll tell you something, I'm torn. My wife and I are fixed incomes. We're teachers' retirement. Oh, it's wonderful. Innovation in Muhammad. But I'll tell you something, if it's not too crazy, my wife and I will support if it's a bump in the taxes, because we're not hypocrites. We still care about the kids in this town, although, we're not teaching any. I try to avoid a lot. I just want to tell you that it's amazing so many people came tonight. I think it's great. It's a great thing, But my point we're two teachers, old teachers, obviously, and we really feel strongly about it. First of all, kids having music, having all the things that some kids only come to school. We taught at many schools. I remember teaching at Brockton High School. I had some pretty rough kids in my room. The only reason why they came was they were talented musicians and they played in the jazz band. They didn't give a shit about me. About any of the other stuff. I taught English, you know. Everybody's favorite stuff. So that's all I got to say. In spirit, we're with you. If I have to spend a little more money every year, you know, I guess that vacation in Bahamas is going to happen. You know, because it's important that the kids have certain things. Don't take music away from them. Don't take sports away from them. Don't take those things away from these kids. That, you know, is the phone going off pretty soon? That makes them want to go to school. Seriously.
Thank you.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, I need to know my name?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can call me Frenchie.
Frenchie? All right. Does anyone else have a comment? Jonathan?
I don't want to, it's going to be hard to follow up, Mr. Frenchie.
No, mister.
All right, Frenchie. I'll try not to curse. My name is Jonathan Sealing. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen here now. And I just wanted to give you insights on what we're doing on the town side here to try to address the situation that we have at Halifax Elementary School. I wrote it down because there's a lot of moving parts. I want to make sure I get it right. First off, I want to thank the committee and our school administrators for their efforts, especially as we tackle some historic budget challenges that we're facing this year. Again, to give some perspective, I want to remind folks that the cost of education over the last decade has increased year to year about 3%. This year, it's a 21% jump at Halifax Elementary and an almost 6% jump for our assessment over at Silver. No one here wants to make any cuts, but given the sheer size of these gaps, I will admit I was hoping some concessions could be made by both school committees as Halifax does its part to try and bridge the considerable shortages. In light of these school budgets, the town is turning over every stone to try to attack this deficit from all angles, asking all town departments to submit budgets with a 10% cut to try to start searching for possible solutions, including the possible reduction of building hours on the town side and possible elimination of positions on the town side. I also want to point out that this issue is not unique to Halifax. Unfortunately, the state of Massachusetts is looking at a record number of towns presenting overrides just for operational budgets these next few years, all because costs are rapidly outpacing what the towns can bring in. If the committee does decide to reopen their budget talk tonight, I ask that they at least consider reducing the number and making some concessions, and there's two main reasons for that. First, and this is just my opinion here, if the committee is really relying on a possible override to help fund the budget, it should try to make the override amount as easy as possible for Halifax residents to swallow. The smaller the amount, the greater that override, in my opinion, has a chance of passing. Secondly, I'd like to point out that since the Silver Lake School Committee voted to use one-time E&D funds to temporarily spare any cuts at Silver Lake this year, they essentially kicked the can down the road for another year. The problem with this approach is that that can gets bigger, and as a result, I am certain all three Silver Lake communities will be looking at overrides next year to cover the punting that they did this year at Silver Lake. Again, I'm not speaking for the rest of the board here, and Tom's here, but if the Board of Selectmen votes to put an override on the warrant for town meeting and then goes to the ballot in May, it will likely, it will likely be presented as a multi-year override this year, just so everybody knows, meaning that one override would be presented to cover the educational shortage here at Halifax Elementary, and another override will be presented to cover what they did this year at Silver Lake to help us for fiscal year 27. So we're likely looking at a multi-year override situation. We would want to present it to the residents that way so that they can be more informed and know as soon as possible as what's coming. And to put it another way, we don't want people thinking that we're trying to spring one on them. And we want you guys to know that this is a distinct reality for the next 2 years. All that said, a reminder, no one here wants to be in this current situation. Thanks to 3 kids that have gone through the school. I know most of the staff here. They are great people. They are great educators. I also know members of our school committee, all of them, and they too care deeply about the children of Halifax. These are tough decisions that nobody wants to make, and I don't envy the position they're in. Whatever comes out of tonight's meeting, we will all try to work together for the children of Halifax and our community as a whole. And thank you for your time.
Does anyone else want to speak? Okay, thank you for everyone that shared their comments. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the interest in our school. All right, I wanted to make a motion to take the agenda out of order and to start with the district update, so we could possibly, if you want to open up the budget discussion again, we could do that. But so I'm going to make a motion to take the agenda out of order and have our district update first.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the first item in the district update is the proposed school committee meeting schedule for next year. Halifax is listed in the gold color. You'll see it in 2 versions. One is the list version, one is the calendar view. If you could please take a look at that and see if that's acceptable. It would be great if the committee would entertain an approval motion this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting schedule for Halifax School Committee. Do I need to do it for the joint committee as well?
We'll do that at a joint committee.
Okay. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you, everyone. And so the next item is if the budget is to be, we are under the impression that there's going to be a motion from the winning side to revisit the budget. And for that reason, we had a number of requests that we have incorporated into a presentation. But we would ask if there is a motion to reconsider the budget from the side that prevailed, which was level services.
So I'd like to make a motion to open up discussions about the budget and revisit the proposed amount.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Do we all vote or just people that voted?
Now-
Now we can all vote?
now you
Okay.
can.
All right, Katie?
Yep.
Oh, any discussion? Katie?
Yep.
Lori?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And myself is yes.
And so I would ask the chair to recognize our Director of Finance and Operations, Sarah Hickey, but also our Assistant Superintendent, our Building Principal, our Special Education Director, as needed throughout the presentation to answer questions.
Please, thank you.
I'm going to start before we can even see anything. As you know, the joint committee voted on the shared cost budget since we last saw you, so there were some reductions in the shared cost budget, which now plays out as a reduction in the overall Halifax Elementary School budget, so that's why this number is different from what we saw in February. The current Halifax Elementary level service budget for FY26, including the shared costs which were voted, is $8,284,489. So in this presentation, the administration was asked to provide a number of scenarios for you to consider. Before we get to all of those different scenarios, what I wanted to do was go through the assessment. So the Silver Lake Regional School District has voted their budget, which means I was able to do the assessment calculations. So Halifax Halifax's assessment for FY26 is $9,030,026.55. That is a $414,808.83 increase over FY25. The largest reason why that increase is significantly more than what you see in Kingston and Clinton on this slide is that there is a portion of the assessment calculation process where the Department of Education basically allocates Chapter 71 funding to Silver Lake. So there's a document that comes out that basically says this is Chapter 70 money that you, Halifax, got, and you need to pay this amount. And there was about a $400,000 increase in the amount that Halifax had to pay for Silver Lake, and that's a big reason why this increase is so large. On the next slide, Halifax, in our last meeting, voted a level service budget of $8,247,111. This was $1,281,972.57 increase over FY25. That represented an 18.4% increase for the Halifax elementary budget. This is something that the town has expressed to us is not something that with the available revenues in the town, they are able to accommodate. So this, keeping those two pieces of information together, what was voted in the last meeting and the Silver Lake assessment, this puts the total cost of education for Halifax right now at $17,277,137.55 for FY26, which is approximately a $1.7 million increase or a 10.9% change. We have some updated budget information since we saw you last. The anticipated circuit breaker reimbursement has stayed the same since our last presentation at $132,705. On March 6th, Superintendent Prue and I received information from the federal government that Halifax has qualified for the REAP grant funding of $54,871. I did want to note on this grant that this is a federal grant and that this grant is not subject to any MBTA vote restrictions. So this is a reimbursement grant from the federal government, and that's what they have allocated for Halifax for next year. The same as what we said in the last meeting, Director Panarisi and I do not believe Halifax will meet maintenance of effort calculations for the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act Special Ed grant in FY26. That was a grant that we received $185,843 in FY25. We didn't project any amount for that in the FY26 budget. Out of district vocational, Halifax.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Yes.
So if we were to get an override, would we still not meet the maintenance of effort?
If an override passed, there would be an opportunity for us to redo all of the calculations and speculate. There were some cuts that we're looking at that might not be cut.
Okay. That's just because, it's not, it just depends. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios and moving parts, so I just wanted to make it clear, and trying to help, because I know it's a lot, that if an override did pass, then we also would not be losing this grant.
That's not.
No?
That's not necessarily true.
It's not necessarily true?
No,
Okay.
the expectation is that you spend more for special education students every single year.
Right.
We're not supposed to supplant with the grant funds the operational, costs of special ed students. That being said, when we have excess of a teacher or we have excesses of paras that were underneath the special education budget, the supplies that we're cutting underneath the special, it's going to show us less money that we spent. So we'd have to look at what would be restored, everywhere across the board, and then how much of that would be restored under special education. And is that enough to be able to make maintenance of that?
Okay.
So how much are we short to get to where we need to be?
Every year it's different. This year I had to take all of the out-of-district students that transferred over to Silver Lake, and I had to look for personnel that we cut, and I had to put them into the system in order to make maintenance of effort, because you are allowed some exclusions. Again, usually it's for like a retirement, so if somebody retires at the higher rate of the contract, and then you hire somebody at a lower rate, they don't penalize you for that. That's an exception I can take. So we would have to look at the exceptions that they would accept and allow for us. Last year, they were very generous in allowing us to take all the students that transferred over to Silver Lake. So we made it very close.
So I don't know that I follow exactly, like, we voted a level service budget. Are you saying that we won't meet the requirements for this grant if we are not at the level service, or even if we achieve the level service?
Even if we achieve the level service.
Okay.
Remember, last year I had all those exceptions.
Yes.
For those tuitions and transportation, for all of those out-of-district kids that I could put as exceptions. That level service budget, as it stood, wasn't enough. And now we have to look at the level service budget now. It might be a little bit better because Sarah has made sure that we have up-to-date information at the Department of Education, so they're not going to be comparing a budget that was 3 years ago to a budget now.
Yeah.
They'll be comparing last year's budget to this year's budget, which is beneficial for us. So rather than say we may not get it, we're going to get it, it's best to say we won't get it, and then if you do get it, then that will be a better situation.
So just thinking forward, if we don't get it this year, does that reset what our minimum expectation is for the following year? Does the state now say, oh, well, this is what you spent next year, if you spend a little more, you get the grant again?
So Sarah's in the budget figures of what the state works off of, whatever she files with the state, and then we come in with the state. Usually it's almost an automatic, because for the cost of special education teachers, they're raises and lanes, right? Mm-hmm. But we had too many cuts with paras and things like that were under the special education line item. Plus the fact, don't forget, that we moved individuals around that weren't supposed to be under special education. And so that also made it look like, oh my gosh, they're not spending enough money on special education. But when we realign those individuals where they should be in the budget, that's what happens. It's hopeful for the next year, if this year's budget is compared to next year, but it's no guarantee. It was very difficult to make maintenance of effort.
So I know I'm asking you a lot of questions, but I think in the interest of transparency, the interest of questions that the community has, it's important to kind of dig down a little. So if we hadn't made those cuts last year to paras, do you think we would still be in this position of not necessarily? Okay, so we're impacted, the changes we made last year to cut impacted this school year, and potentially grant money this school year. Am I understanding that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Plus, don't forget, there's a cut in special education in those tiered cuts as well. So
I understand.
even more behind them.
Yep, I understand, thank you.
One last question with the level service budget, where I know you can't say right now, but I know it's not budgeted right now as if we're going to have this grant. However, if we do somehow manage to get the grant, can that money be carried forward over?
The 240 grant is carried over for 2 years, so it would be able to help as circuit breaker.
Okay, that's great. Okay, sorry, thank you.
So just to clarify, when the Department of Education does the maintenance of effort calculation. So for this year, for the FY25 grant, they were comparing our FY25 budget to the FY23 expenditures. So what they do is in October, when the grant is filed, they compare it to the audited information from 2 years ago. Then when the FY24 information gets audited, they go back and look at it again. So next year's 240 grant will be comparing the FY26 budget to the FY24 expenditures, and FY24 was prior to the reorganization. So all of the work that had to be done and when I say all of the work, Dr. Panarisi worked for months and months in order to get this grant approved this year. All of that's going to have to be refreshed in the Department of Education's minds, and a lot of it redone for next year to see if we might be eligible.
And that's for the IDEA grant?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So the last thing on this slide, out-of-district vocational, that is students that attend either the agricultural school or a vocational school that has a program that we don't have at Silver Lake. So currently, we have one student attending South Shore Vocational Technical High School in Hanover, and that student will be continuing at South Shore Votech. We've had one new application for out-of-district vocational since I met you last, and so, again, there's 3 placements budgeted. It looks like right now we're definitely going to have 2. But again, the difficulty that we have is that the students' applications to the schools are due March 15th, and then the students and their families are required to notify us on April 1st whether they've applied or not. So this really is not good timing when it comes to producing a budget.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So we've budgeted 3 placements. If we receive information that only 2 students are attending for next year, can we reallocate that money into a different place? And what would be the time frame for that?
On April 1st, we would know.
Okay. And so before town meeting, we would know what that dollar value is
Yes.
that can be added back into the budget.
And if 7 kids have applied and just not told us yet, we would have that conversation also.
What do you mean by that? If 7 kids applied and didn't tell us yet?
They have a deadline of applying
Yep.
to a different vocational school, but their deadline is March 15th. So if there are 15 students that have applied to different schools, they have until April 1st to let us know they've applied.
So we could have 5 students, and we've budgeted for 3.
We could.
So
we
could be even more, our budget could be even more expensive than what it is now.
Potentially.
Okay.
But right now, we know we have 1 student attending and planning on continuing attending, and we've had 1 student apply and notify us that they've applied.
Do we lose funding? I think I know the answer, but I want to ask it for the general public. Do we lose funding if, in our district, if a student is a student at a vocational program? Does the money follow the student that the state provides?
The Chapter 70 money follows the student.
Okay.
And just for transparency, is there a reason why this is underneath the elementary budget instead of the high school budget?
It's required by regulation to be part of the town's budget, not the grade level. Unlike special education, which had to be restructured so that it represented the grade levels and the districts of those grade levels.
So on the next slide, talking about the tiered cuts. So prior to you even receiving the preliminary budget in January, the administrative team met and we produced some cuts. These tier 1 cuts, $77,608. These cuts were made back in December. These were reflected in the budget that was first presented to you in January. So these have been done, and I'm just mentioning again that those have already been taken out, and everything we've talked about since January 1st included that. There was a request from a school committee member to ask what would the class sizes look like if there were 3 teachers cut. So if there were 3 teachers cut, that would save $210,000 in the budget, and the estimated class sizes you can see there would be 21 in kindergarten, 21 in first grade, 23 in second grade, 22 in third, 22 in fourth, 19 in fifth, and 23 in sixth grade.
Sarah, before you move off of this, I have a couple of questions. This was a request that I had made. It was based on some of the conversation at last month's meeting, but also some of the feedback that we've heard. So a lot of folks have spoken about the concern of large class sizes. I think that even eliminating, no one wants to eliminate a teacher's position, but given the current student populations, even if we were to eliminate a teacher in third, fourth, and sixth grade, the class sizes would still be well under 25. The highest class number is 23 in sixth grade and in second grade. So I just want to point that out, that I don't know that anyone here on this committee wants to see classroom sizes over 30.
And if I can just mention, no matter what teacher is cut, it's by seniority. So we're not really cutting a third grade teacher necessarily, or a fourth grade teacher, or a sixth grade teacher. It's going to be whoever joined employment last, unfortunately.
Actually, I do have one other question, because a big part, sorry.
It's also, it's not only that, but it's also licensure.
So that brings up another question that I wanted to raise, again, in the interest of transparency. And I've said this multiple times, and I think this is a really important point. When you're talking to your neighbors, when you're talking through the community, we as a school committee vote on a total dollar for the budget. We don't vote that we're going to eliminate 3 teachers. We can ask the administration, what can we eliminate to get us to a more palatable number that we think the town can support at town meeting. So suggesting that we could save $210 or $210,000 if we eliminate those 3 teaching positions, that's what we vote on, but that requires the administration to look at the entire budget, and they have the authority or the autonomy to make changes to line items. If they decide there's a contract reason, and Jill, I know you've spoken of this, and if you can help me clarify, it would be great, but if there is something contractually that means we can't eliminate those 3 positions, there may be ways that you look at other items in the budget to cut, perhaps a para or a specialist. Am I misstating that?
You may be referring to the need to make sure that we can meet all contractual obligations with the amount of staffing that we have. So sometimes that will depend upon the numbers of, so for example, we're estimating the number of kindergartners.
Yep.
So this is where we're projecting the class cuts would come from. But if kindergarten were to be much larger than we anticipated, we might have to pull an additional person from a different grade level to help out with kindergarten, and that could influence as well.
I think and this is why I'm thinking in this way, last year when we made the cuts to specialists, originally our group voted to lower each specialist position from a 1.0 to a 0.9. And there was some discussion, and administration changed it slightly, where there was one specialist that retained the 1.0, and the other three, I'm sorry, two? Okay, and the other three made up the difference, so their hours were cut more. And I don't know that that was when we were all voting on it. Again, you, as an administrator, have that autonomy to make those decisions. But I don't know that that, for me, was what we envisioned would happen. So I just am putting that out there into the ether, into the universe, so folks know. We may go into this discussion saying, this is where we think cuts are reasonable. They may not pan out that way, and I want to be very clear with the community. We do our best to try to hear your concerns, but again, at the end of the day, the budget may look different, or the actual administration of the budget may look different.
Can I circle back for a second? So the gap for Halifax Elementary is $1,281,972.57, but the total gap is 1 million, including both the assessment and, if you put the cost of education all together, it's 1.7 million. So does that mean if an override doesn't pass, that Halifax Elementary would actually need to cut 1.7 million instead of the 1.2 million because of what was voted on by the joint school committee in Silver Lake? Because that would impact a lot of things.
So right now, the total cost of education has an increase of $1.7 million because you, as a school committee, voted a level service budget, which was an 18% increase. So if there's any change that gets made in that tonight, that will change the town's budget and change the total cost of education. The Silver Lake portion won't change.
Right.
And then the town would need to look at the dollar increase, the percent increase overall.
But the gap is actually 1.7 million for education K through pre-K through 12.
I don't know that that's the gap. That's just the increase from FY25 to FY26.
We've already taken into account the retirement that we have come on, right?
She asked if we took into account the retirement for this year.
Go back to the previous presentation.
Was there any new retirement since we talked last?
No, just
So that change has been made in the salaries then? Are we talking about, if we're talking about a second grade retirement?
Well, I mean, my question is say we decide on a budget number tonight and request an override, what is the actual amount that either wouldn't require cutting because of and I don't know if we need the Board of Selectmen to weigh in here because, I mean, is the gap 1.2 million is for HES, and then the total gap is 1.7 million because of how Silver Lake and the joint committee voted. So in order to fully fund education, would the override need to be 1.7 million at level service, how everything was voted? That's my question.
I believe, I will double check with Cody, but I believe the override being considered is for Halifax Elementary School, not Silver Lake.
But if there's a gap in the budget and we have no say over what we pay to Silver Lake, would that require?
That budget was voted on by the three towns. Jill, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. That budget was voted on by the three communities. There will be, so even if we will be on Halifax will be on the hook for that budget if Kingston and Plimpton pass that budget. And as it appears now, it appears that both Kingston and Plimpton plan on passing that budget. So that is money that we will have to allocate to the middle school and high school to fulfill the budget requirements.
And is it correct to assume it would probably come from elementary school budget, or would it come from elsewhere in the town?
I believe we have it set aside. I don't want to speculate right now. I'll shoot a message and get you a firm answer.
That would be great, just because, we're trying to...
Yeah, no, you want the whole picture.
Exactly, and we don't want to vote something that's shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're going to end up losing a lot anyway, That's not really helping, so...
Yep, I'll see what I can get.
Thank you, I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you. So following up, this next slide is if we cut the 3 positions, the reduction amount would be $210,000. That would in turn change the operating budget to the school to $7,886,913, which is a 15.6% increase over FY '25. So that was one scenario that we were asked, so that's something for you to consider. One of the things that we did also in the last school committee meeting, we had the Tier 1 cuts that were already happened, Tier 2 and Tier 3, and it was expressed that Tier 2 was a big bite. And so what we did was took the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cuts and split them up into Tiers 2, 3, and 4, so that you could consider different money amounts. So this would be a new Tier 2 proposed cut. It would be 1 grade 3, 1 grade 4, 1 grade 5, 1 grade 6 teacher, 1 tech teacher, 1 special ed teacher, and the cost of 1 bus to be offset by fees. That would be a savings of $495,626. If you look on the right-hand side at the bottom, that gives class sizes of 21 in kindergarten, 21 first grade, 23 in second, 22 in third, 22 in fourth, 26 in fifth grade, and 23 in sixth grade, for an average class size of 22.
Can you clarify what you mean by 1 bus paid by fees?
Yes, the discussion there had been 2 different discussions that happened. One was to charge a bus fee, and one was to cut a bus. Logistically, we can't cut a bus, we have to get the kids to school, but we could charge fees for the bus and then use those fees to pay for one of the buses.
And what revenue would we see from that? For charging for busing?
That all depends on what the school committee decides per student for a bus fee.
So what did you use to calculate that into Tier 2 then? Because there had to be a dollar figure added into that.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think it's $43,000 was the cost of 1 bus. One of you emailed me a question.
I think it was me. Let me see if I can...
Sorry about that.
I think it was in a previous presentation as well.
Could have been.
The cost of each bus is $38,401.20.
So that's the number I used.
Thank you.
And keep in mind that that is if the school committee chooses to charge bus fees and if families choose to sign students up, and if the amount that is charged is enough to cover the cost. That's...
So if families opt out, if they say, I don't want to pay for bus, I'm going to drive my kid to school, is there a way that we can still eliminate a bus because we have less students, or no? We're obligated to have a certain number of buses based on the current enrollment?
you're asking about complex things that I can't project out, I would have to talk to the bus company about that.
Okay.
And a lot of things, in school districts where they charge for buses, and they've been charging for buses for years and years, they have patterns and you can make predictions.
Yeah.
One of the things I try to say is, keep in mind that this is really a huge unknown, and I can make my best guesses at things. But there's not a person sitting in this room that can tell us how many kindergartners there are going to be at this school next year. So it's kind of like we don't know who would sign up for busing and who wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I understand. I do have a couple of questions about the tech teacher and the special educator. So where would those cuts happen? Is it the computer tech? Is that what we would be eliminating?
That, I believe, is the tech specialist.
Yes.
Okay. And then for special education, if we eliminate a teacher, does that put us in jeopardy of not meeting special education requirements?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay. Okay.
For compliance
Pretty clear.
reasons alone.
Yep, that's pretty clear. Thank you.
And never mind the IDEA grant
Yeah.
for subsequent years.
Yeah.
This school is heavy IEP, and you need every special educator, and every special educator in this building really is incredible. So,
I think we need every educator in the building. I don't think just special education or,
yeah.
we're heavy IEP and we're not talking about cutting teachers.
Please go on.
So on the next slide, again, remembering that that we took the Tier 2 and Tier 3 from last time and split it up into a Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. So this would be the new Tier 3, which would be $337,300, a math specialist, a reading specialist, 1 custodian, .8 library teacher, .8 art teacher. This would be, again, on top of the Tier 2 cuts in the last slide. There are no changes to the class sizes on this slide because none of those positions on the left-hand side are classroom teachers. So the class sizes after Tier 2 cuts to Tier 3 remain the same. Any questions about Tier 3?
Yes. The math and reading specialists do either fall under Title I grants?
The math specialist is partially funded by Title I.
So if it's partially funded by Title I, then why would we cut them 100%? If, just throwing it out there, why not take that grant money and still apply it as much as we can? Why give that grant money back?
We wouldn't be giving the grant money back. We don't currently have, and we won't have the numbers typically until July. And at that time, we may be able to use Title I funds. But also remember with the restructuring, Title I, Title IIA, all of those grants used to fall under the umbrella of Silver Lake with allocations to each of the elementary school districts. We were pretending to be fully regionalized. We are not fully regionalized, and Halifax will have a separate, we have to apply separately for each of the 4 districts now for all of our grants, and Halifax will have a very specific amount allocated to Halifax. It's an unknown.
Yep.
No, we only have one math specialist and 1 reading specialist right now, right?
Yes.
And in the next slide, when you see what happens to classroom sizes, you'll know why this was Tier 3.
So moving on to Tier 4, 1 kindergarten, 1 grade 1, 1 grade 3, 1 grade 4, 1 grade 6, for a total of $400,000. This puts the kindergarten class size at 28, the first grade average class size at 27, second grade 23, third grade 34, fourth grade 34, fifth grade 26, sixth grade 35, for an average class size in the building of 28. Questions about Tier 4?
I don't think it's realistic.
Can we just like not even talk about tier 4 and just not get there? We're not going there. We can't go there.
So I put together a summary of the adjusted Tier 2, 3, 4. So if you look at this slide, the Tier 2 reduction amount, $495,626. That would change the operating budget for Halifax Elementary to approximately $7.6 million, which would be an 11.42% increase over FY26. If we add in Tier 3, it brings the operating budget down to approximately $7.3 million, which would be a 6.48% increase over FY25. Adding in the additional Tier 4 brings the operating budget down to $6.8 million, and the increase over FY25 would be 0.61%. And so the next slide is just for you to review and revote, ask questions, maybe. And then I added in a motion language slide, and you'll notice I left numbers blank because this is the point of the presentation where I'm going to pull out my spreadsheet.
Okay, I have a question about professional development and some textbook costs. Thank you. I know that. I'm sure Jill shared with you. It was just some lines on there just asking about what they were for. And
so one of the line items, Halifax staff outside PD, which is $16,000. That's for a few things. That's for faculty members to receive professional development for the new math curriculum, if we get the new math curriculum, and to have professional development provided by the publisher, or to also go to any professional development outside the school that might be provided to learn about math workshop or how to utilize it. So that's professional development related to faculty members going to get professional development for the new math curriculum in particular. It also would include any PD that any faculty member in Halifax requests to go to. For example, any professional development that they wanted to go to anywhere outside of the school, literacy, science, social studies, anything, and that's $10,000. That's that particular staff outside PD.
Are there contractual obligations to provide certain PE hours? Is that part of the teacher's contract?
For their certification, they need professional development points, which sometimes we provide professional development in the district that counts as professional development points. And sometimes people go out to get professional development, but they need those PDPs or that professional development for recertification. So every 5 years, when they go to recertify, they need to document that they've done that to keep their certification. So it is an important piece for them to keep up.
So there's nothing written in the contract that says that we're required to provide that professional development, correct?
So we have courses that are required to be reimbursed at a certain rate in Halifax.
And that's a separate line item?
Yes.
Yeah, that's course reimbursement.
I would also add something that hasn't been mentioned yet. Back in the fall, we mentioned that the math program is sunsetting. We do not have a math program after this year. So it's not the same traditional textbook program that we used to have many years ago. You can just keep the same old books.
Right.
It's now, subscriptions are online and they sunset.
However, hasn't the district spent an exorbitant amount of time in PD's building our EduFinder or whatever, what's the EduPlanet, where we're doing UBDI, and all of those lesson plans are still available to us?
And nothing was done. Well, there's two things. EduPlanet, I think, is what you're speaking to.
Can we not have yelling out, please? Thank you.
EduPlanet is what I think you were speaking to, and that predates me in some ways, but that is a place where a lot of the lessons are uploaded. It's not necessarily a comprehensive curriculum, like Jill was saying, where it's a curriculum that you're utilizing that is online pieces that has necessarily the hardware, the hard books and things like that that you so that was the other side. That was the staff meeting. That was the PD.
Okay.
I don't know if you had other specific.
I had the textbooks too, the 95,000.
So under Halifax Elementary School textbooks, contractual services, there are a few things included there. English language arts consumables for $12,000, a new math curriculum, and Halifax's share of that would be $81,000, and then science curriculum consumables, which would be $2,800. So that's a breakdown of that number on what that would go to. Keep in mind that that's curriculum, that's the teaching and learning, that's the what happens every day.
Are we required, if the other schools in our district decide to go with this math curriculum, to buy into it at this very same time as them?
I don't think there's necessarily a requirement, but keep in mind that all of the students that leave here on lunch to 7th grade at Silver Lake, and with other students from Kingston. So I would just keep that in mind.
I would also ask that you keep in mind the number of students who are not meeting or exceeding grade level expectations in math.
Yeah. And just to speak to that a little bit, over the last 4 years in Halifax for grades 3 through 6 in math, in year 21, 45% were proficient, in year 22, 48% were proficient, and in 23, 48% were proficient, and in spring of 24, 55% of students were proficient, grades 3 through 6 at Halifax Elementary School.
So here's sort of where I struggle, not being an educator myself. But, are these curriculums and I'm really just asking for understanding because having to make these budget decisions is impossible. So having these curriculums would be more important. Well, I don't know how to say it really because it's hard to, is the staff, what would have a greater impact on learning? Losing staff or losing curriculum? I gotta ask here. Please don't yell out. We're trying to keep it.
So
I really don't I'm not an educator. I know that.
So obviously, losing any staff would be difficult, and so, that's really important to understand, so I want to underscore that. I can give you my opinion on a curriculum that is consistent, that is equitable across each grade level and every one of the grade levels in the district, that has a scope and sequence that addresses the standards. And when I say equitable, I mean what is happening in one classroom is happening in another classroom. That's what I mean by equitable. That what one child's getting in one third grade classroom is what they're getting in another third grade classroom. That it is it's aligned with the standards and those pieces. I think that's what I can speak to as the importance to that.
And we don't have a math curriculum after this year because it's aging out?
Because the contract is up with the
contract is up with the company.
Yes.
Teachers?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So we have to buy some curriculum because we don't have anything. Like this, is there nothing that they can use like what they've been doing? I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Like where are we at with needing to spend a teacher salary on curriculum right now? Right. Where are we with that? Like is there no other option?
We don't have a complete K through grade 6 written curriculum in EduPlanet. We won't have a resource that can be used by all teachers in each grade that is aligned with state standards. We can expect teachers to align their curriculum with state standards. But without those materials, it is more difficult to do in English, math, and science, as well as other areas. So again, it's.
But in a time of dire
both
straits,
very
it's
important.
doable, right? I mean, can
It's-
they?
So, again, I'm going to use an analogy, which.
So, I told the story to Dr. Prue. I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and I used to, is this the story you wanted?
I don't know.
And I would go to school and I would get handed a book and I would open it up to the book plate. Remember those, the book
Yeah.
plate? And I would look through it to see which of my siblings had this book. You know what doesn't exist anymore? Those books. Because textbook publishers learned that if you produce a book that's going to last 20, 25, 30 years. Algebra 1 hasn't changed in 3,000 years, so an Algebra 1 book should last that long. I know we don't teach that here, but we all took Algebra 1.
An example.
So the books started about 20 years ago to fall apart, and you'd have to rebind them. And then the textbook publishers learned that, if we do all these supplementary materials that you can get on a CD-ROM, then you can sell the CD-ROM. But the moneymaker now is the kids get, it's a subscription, much like your cable, and it turns on and it turns off. So there's not really, if you want the teachers to have materials to use with students, the subscription with materials ends June 30th, and we're talking about next year's.
So the analogy I was looking for was your firefighter analogy.
I'll tell that one too. So, my firefighter analogy is, we are talking about curriculum instruction and teaching and learning. That's what we do. We're a school district. And the conversations that we're having about curriculum right now would be the same as if we were talking to the fire department about, you can't have water and let's cut some hoses. Or tell the police department, I'm sorry, you can only get 3 tires.
This is not a good analogy. Not one person has asked any teacher here if we need a new mask.
It's not an open meeting, number one. Number two, there has been opportunity for teachers to participate in examining math curriculums and to participate in that, which Assistant Superintendent Clifford can speak to. And regardless of whether or not you like the analogy, we are here for teaching and learning. And while some classroom sizes, if you get to Tier 4, we would not recommend, the reality is that we have an obligation to make sure that all students have access to grade level expectations. And in the absence of those materials, it becomes difficult, if not impossible. Currently, we're looking at least 45% of students not meeting grade level expectations.
In the spring of 24, 55%.
I appreciate the question, I appreciate the answers, and again, I feel like as the school committee, even if we vote on a total number, it doesn't mean that we specifically have decisions about how because you do have line item autonomy, and my point is to bring it up to say, can we look at this, can we look at that, and I understand where everyone is coming from, and I'm trying to get all the information out as much as we can and ask the questions. Jonathan?
I just want to let you guys know I did find the answer out, and amazingly, finally, I was correct. The override would affect Halifax Elementary School and not the Silver Lake budget, as that budget is likely to be passed by the other two towns. So the town is budgeting to fulfill that budget. So whatever the cuts are here that are being proposed tonight are the cuts.
So our deficit is the 1.1 million?
1.3 for the Halifax.
Okay, that, I want to just make sure of that, thank you.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is the worst case scenario.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, there's additional discussion?
Yeah, same general ledger area. The Halifax Elementary PD contracted services, can you, and the instructional coach, are those to go with partnership with the Hill for Literacy?
So the instructional coaching is really, it's professional development for the administrators here at the building. That's the $3,000. The HES PD contractual services for $24,000. This is for paying for for professional development related for math, but for the publisher to come here to the building, not for teachers to go out, but for PD here. For instance, the 2 days before school begins, to have somebody come to Halifax Elementary School and provide professional development to the teachers. Because it's one thing to select a program, it's really another thing to implement it. It's quite a different thing. Also, this portion out of this $24,000 would be for contracting with the Hill for Literacy to conduct a core program review for K through 6. Halifax's portion, which would include consulting and also a science of reading and module course for all teachers and all administrators. And that would be $14,000.
Is there a way to, instead of every teacher getting the science of reading course all at once, offer it to a portion this year and a portion next year to cut some of those expenses?
Yeah, that's possible.
Or could we combine with the other elementary schools and do all the professional development at one school? Is that?
It needs to be one, Halifax pays its portion.
Well, like otherwise it becomes part of the joint.
Yeah, I couldn't pay it out of other people's and then have Halifax. And then the last piece is also, this is to fund Halifax's portion of Studying Skillful Teacher, which is a contractual class that teachers have to take within the first 3 years here. They attend that. It's, I think, 4 days during the summer and then 5 during the year. So this is something that teachers contractually take. So that's the $24,000 into those 3 different buckets.
And then one last one. I know we can't project it, but it appears as though from the last ledger I looked at, we've only used about half of tuition reimbursement for this year. Is there a possibility that this might need to be increased should we vote to get rid of the HES staff outside PD? Because teachers will then have to go outside, pay for a course, and then ask for that tuition reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay. Can I ask another question? Sorry, I've been writing tons of notes for days. The float nurse, I noticed that's still in the spreadsheet that I think you were getting to next. And maybe I looked at a one that was not updated, but I noticed that float nurse is still in there, even though the joint committee voted not to fund that position any longer. And that's a savings of $7,500.
I'm just scrolling through my spreadsheet.
Yep. It's on the second page, printed.
The float nurse?
Yep.
Was removed from the Halifax budget. I didn't update, when you said it's on the second page of the line item budget, that budget document you're looking at hasn't been updated since the joint committee vote.
Okay, because that would...
So that money amount was taken out and is reflected in the numbers I gave you tonight.
Thank you. And that would be the same for the food service supervision that went to the revolving account, correct?
Yes.
And then, last month you mentioned that we currently had a surplus in circuit breaker, correct?
Transportation, correct?
So there are 3 expenditure types for special education: contractual services, tuitions, and transportation. Those are very complex line items, and we pay for those out of the operating budget, the 240 grant, and circuit breaker revolving account. And currently, in aggregate, there is excess money in those.
Could you give me that amount again?
The number didn't change much between the last meeting and this meeting. It's currently around $391,000.
But you have to remember, that all might not be there at the end of the year. What we've done is we revised some of the transportation contracts with the private vendors, saved a lot of money there. But there's contracted services, we're a little bit over on that line. We took the excess ESY funds, that's included in there. That's what we're thinking is going to be there by the end of the year, hopefully, somewhere.
The 391?
Because transportation for circuit breaker last year, we didn't put it in the estimate because we weren't sure, because the year before it might have been 50, it was 75%, so that's a big chunk for us to have that money, so that you can count on some of that money. How much?
Okay.
That's a variable. How much you could.
So let's just say it's all there. We retain that $390,000.
Yep.
What can we do with that money? Does it have to be certified to go back to the town because it's this year's budget, or what can we do?
So keep in mind, again, we're talking about 3 different buckets of money. The piece of the budget that's the operating budget is, if there were leftovers in the operating budget, that would go back to the town, turned over at the end of year. The 240 grant, the IDEA grant, this year's 240 grant, those funds can be carried over from year to year. And the circuit breaker, by law, we are allowed to carry 1 year's worth of circuit breaker forward into the next year. So if there is excess money in those accounts, we could carry it over in the 240 grant and the circuit breaker account to use to offset the FY26 budget. It's not something that today, in March, I could confidently tell you, oh, there's going to be $300,000.
And
All right,
there's
this is-
restricted spending. So on circuit breaker, you can only spend for out-of-district tuitions and transportation.
Okay.
It's not like you can apply that to other things.
So we know that we're going to have those expenses this year, this coming year. So I have a question, and maybe this is an odd way of thinking about it, but with these 3 buckets that you're talking about, is there a hierarchy in where we pull the funds from to pay for these services month to month? Like, in my opinion, if we have some of this money coming from an operating budget that could go back to the town, shouldn't we spend those dollars first versus the money from the 240 and the circuit breaker?
Depends.
Okay.
So if we have leftover circuit breaker from last year that we have to hurry up and use this year,
Okay.
so we're going to take all those funds and use those funds first. And it has to be for the out-of-district tuitions.
Okay.
The 240 grant, that has to be used for special education to enhance special education above and beyond, right? So that part is over there. And if we have leftover money for that, we use that money first. So the hierarchy is to use anything that's left over in the previous year and then move forward that way. However, there are ways that the fiscal year 240 grant can be used in a manner that supports the district budget. Not so much, the only way that the circuit breaker can is through out-of-district tuitions and transportation.
Okay.
A little bit more flexibility.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is, it seems like there is a possibility that we will have leftover money And it could be in the operating budget, which is money we're required to turn back to the town. And that was something that happened last year, and folks were concerned about that, which is a process that happens every year. I understand that's what we do as a school committee to close out the fiscal year. Am I wrong?
Both of those things that we're looking at the overages on are for this year. So we have till next year to exhaust those funds. We don't.
So end of fiscal year?
That we need to spend for
Yeah, those are all gone. Now we're working on this, this current year, and they give us 2 years to
spend it.
Yeah.
So if we can use our operating budget to possibly pay for some of these special education funds, that we could do that to then preserve some of this.
We would have to look at the operating budget, where the funds are allocated specifically for certain items, and if it's transferable with the 240 grant as well as the circuit breaker. Sarah could let us.
But I mean, we could put it towards special education expenses for next year that would then help with our regular budget, correct?
If we, assuming that we have a big chunk of money in the regular budget that we're spending for special education.
What are we at right now, just for circuit breaker, that we're looking at with a surplus? Just circuit breaker.
Well, that's in excess. 262,509. Is that the circuit breaker? Yeah.
That's the balance available, but that's in all 3 buckets. The report doesn't break it out for us. I can get that information to you.
Okay.
I think my concern is, how do we preserve not having to turn money back to the town? How do we work within this framework to spend the money that would be something we'd have to return to the town?
So please recall that last year we had a budget freeze.
Yes.
Because we had extraordinary costs in a number of areas, particularly, if I recall, special education and, was it course reimbursement? So we had to be very conservative and freeze the budget, which led to more money than normally would be sent back to the town. Generally speaking, that's not the case. As of right now, we haven't had to have a budget freeze.
Well, I almost would prefer a budget freeze to save money, I know it's harder for you, right? But if we freeze the budget and then we can pay for some of the expenses with the budget frozen, if we save some money by freezing the budget, for instance, for this year, then if we pay some of the special ed costs with that, are you allowed to use your the regular operating budget to pay for special ed?
By law, we're allowed to prepay tuition up to 1 year for private placements and up to 3 months for collaboratives.
But my thought being, if we were to freeze the budget, have some excess funds, we could put it towards, I don't know if I'm just repeating the same thing, but I'm just trying to think of ways that we could push some of this special education surplus we have at the moment in the 3 buckets towards next year.
I'd like to propose, if I can get a number for circuit breaker, I'd like to make a motion that the superintendent move that money to the FY26 budget. And that way we can use that money.
If I'm understanding correctly, we have already anticipated applying and deducting circuit breaker.
No, I believe what she's saying is stop using any FY25 for circuit breaker.
Correct.
So tuitions that were paid in FY24 are reimbursed to us to be used in FY '25. So I believe what you're asking is to freeze the circuit breaker account as it stands.
Correct. But I can't do that without a dollar figure.
And I need to speak to the special ed bookkeeper to get that dollar figure.
So if we were to do that, we don't meet again until April. Like, those are things that we need to make decisions on this evening.
What could the potential savings be that we could put towards next year? Can we get a ballpark, or?
It's definitely under $391,000.
That's like a whole tier.
Yep, I know that.
I know. That's-
And
that's
keep in mind,
why I'm
part of
interested
that
in this.
$391,000 is operating budget. So,
And we can always, in the event that we happen to need some of that money in circuit breaker, we can always vote again to move the money back. It's not like
I want to know what the actual savings would be. Is there any way we can find that out tonight?
I'm texting.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any other discussion while we're...
So I'm just looking at the questions that were asked at the beginning of the meeting by some of the folks who spoke. And one of the questions was what happens if we don't get the override? And at what point will the state take over the school? I don't know that, yeah, I would like that to be.
Okay, if we don't get the override, then we'll have all the cuts proposed. And you know, that's, if the override doesn't pass, that's what will happen.
Tier 4.
Tier 4, all the cuts. If we don't get the override and then we're in a position again next year, we would most likely go into receivership the following year, which means the state takes over your school and we do what they say. I don't completely understand. I don't know. I'm sorry. I mean, if receivership means that they charge the town a certain amount, correct? Like this
Yeah,
is
they
how
set
much
our
you're paying.
budget,
Yeah, they set our
and
budget.
usually for the school, it's a benefit, because they want us to educate our students properly.
Right, but then it would impact other.
It
town
impacts the
services.
town.
Yeah, it would impact the other town services, so it would not.
It wouldn't be a tax savings to our
Yeah, tax
taxpayers.
savings to our town. It would, you know.
It's not appropriate, and I know, well, why did we increase by 21%? You know, I'm
Special
sitting here-
education costs have gone up dramatically.
But
and-
that is dramatic, right? So I'm sitting here wearing two hats right now. As a parent, I love everything about supporting all of our kids, and I think everybody in this room clearly does. But the other is a taxpayer. And to Frenchie's point, who's already left, he's the only person in this room that probably doesn't have any children, minus a few, right? So if I'm thinking about this, what you just said, if we don't get the override, and more of the people in this town are not here than that are here, we're not getting the override, which is why we need to understand, or at least I do, where did this 21% increase come from? Because if I'm telling my neighbors, hey, we need more taxes to support our school, they're going to say to me, why did we spend 21% more? Where did that come from?
So all of our budget presentations are available. We have been talking about the budget since November and had a formal preliminary budget as early as January. They are listed on our website, and we have talked about the pieces of the puzzle that make up different percentages. It's not just increases in special education, albeit that is an area that we don't have control over. There are other areas of increase. Just think about your own grocery bills and how much, if your grocery bill has probably gone up more than 3%. More than 2.5%, which is Proposition 2.5, what we're allowed to go up to. The reality is that it's a flaw in the funding mechanism for Chapter 70. The cost to educate is far outstripping the resources to pay for that education. And that's not something that anyone at this table alone can control. It's something that the Mass Association of School Superintendents, the Mass Association of School Councils, I believe the Mass Teachers Association, are all working to try to find ways to improve the funding formulas for schools throughout the Commonwealth. It's not just happening here in Halifax, it's throughout the state. We can't keep up with the expense.
And I know there's a chairs meeting with state representatives of all the chairs in the area coming up, and I know I've met with state representatives. We are doing all that we can to fix a broken problem, and it's just going to take a large effort by everyone. And you make a good point. This is not the whole town. And we value education. Everyone in this room values education and wants the same thing. And so it's really, what do we do in the meantime with this extremely difficult situation, understanding that it's hard to ask people to pay more, but it's also, a very important thing. And we also don't want, our school budget is 53% of our entire town budget. So it's not like we can pull that much from other places. It's just like in your own budget. If your mortgage is 50%, but then, your taxes go up, you're going to pull from somewhere else in your household budget, and so it's, when it's such a large chunk, you can pull from other services, and we lose a lot to not gain as much in another area, I think. And so it's an extremely challenging, and I agree that we're trying to deal with something that's broken right now and doing the very best that we can, and trying to figure out, well, how can we sort of patch through until hopefully we can get some funds from the state, or, I don't think we're going to get much federal help. So, we live in a state that values education, but we really need, as a community, to pull together for it. And as a school committee member, I'll be honest, I have wrestled with, if we ask for the full override amount, can we pad ourselves a little bit for next year to kind of help ourselves? Or if we lessen the override amount, does it have a better chance of passing? And those are the things I'm personally wrestling with. I can't speak for the rest of the committee, which is why we're going through all these things. Like, can we just save a little bit here? Can we just save a little bit here? Because every little bit helps. And, but anyway, that's, Jonathan, did you want to?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. I don't think this, glad you say, is a problem that's specific to Halifax. I know tomorrow in our Board of Selectmen meeting, I'm going to ask the board to submit a letter to our state representative to take a hard look at the education formula, because when it's all across the state, to me that says it's not one specific town, it's everywhere. It's how the state is approaching their education funding, how they cap their inflation markers. When you have towns like Duxbury that are 6 million in a hole, in Norwell that are 5 million in a hole, and these are affluent communities, right? So the fact that you're seeing it across the state, to me, means the problem lies a lot higher than Halifax, but to your point, Lauren, that's not going to help us this year. So I urge people, reach out to your representatives at the state level, reach out to your state senators, explain what's going on in your community, because there's strength in numbers. And if they start hearing from all of us, we're going to have to get by this year, but it might help us a lot coming down the road, because unless things change at the state level, I don't see this scenario changing much next year.
And as a school committee, I want to make the best decision for our school, but also have it be palatable to the town. And I wish I could predict the future and know exactly what that sweet spot is, because that's where that's where it's really, really hard. And we actually in our school committee, we have in our folder that we have for our school committees, we have what the impact of an override would be on each average tax bill. And that's information that we can get out. But again, as a school committee, we need to vote on a total number. And
Can I just say too, I know one of the questions is, a big question that's been asked about, how do we get here? How did we get here? Why are we dealing with this issue? I think it's important for our community to understand, we live in a regional district, but we are not a fully regionalized school district. So, you know, there's 4 school committees, 4 school districts. One of my big concerns as a member of the Halifax committee is making sure there's equity in K through 6 education between Halifax, Plimpton, Dennett. Halifax, Plimpton, Kingston have entirely different tax bases. They have different funding than Halifax does. They're a different type of community. We are very different. I mean, we just are. People really have a different voting mindset when it comes to tax increases. Everyone is careful, and we all want to respect the citizens of the community, but when we sit at this table, we don't really have a lot of faith that when this gets to town meeting, that people will understand the value of education and why it's important to vote on it. You know, we've already lost grant funding because we didn't pass the MBTA vote that affected the school. Thankfully, there was a grant project that we asked for to look at fully regionalizing our school district, which would provide some cost savings potentially, because you'd have one school committee, you'd have one administration. You know, you wouldn't have Jill and Sarah and Dr. Clifford running around trying to figure out how to do 4 budget, right. I mean, and that's just at the administrative level. I think there's other cost savings that could be realized. When we're talking about, well, can some of this funding be put onto another town's budget? If we were fully regionalized, we probably could do professional development, right? It wouldn't be a town-by-town assessment.
It could also be a shared cost. Like,
correct.
All the teachers went to one school to receive the professional
correct.
development, then it's not, you know, that, which is
right.
what I was asking earlier. Like, I wouldn't ask another town to pay for our professional
correct.
development, but it would be something we could consolidate.
So we had won that grant, and we had to turn it over to the town of Kingston because we were in jeopardy of losing that grant, which could provide significant savings to our district, because we voted down the MBTA vote. Thankfully, Kingston has it, and they're going to work with us on this committee. That is a long-term project. That is not something that's going to happen next year. It's going to take time, but that is a roadmap to help us. Those are things that we're working on. The other thing that I've heard thrown around a little bit, I don't engage on Facebook, social media as a school committee member, but I do see things that are thrown out there on Facebook. And I've heard some conversation around why aren't we looking to fully regionalize everything, like combine all services for Kingston, Plimpton, and Halifax. I don't know that there's an appetite. I definitely don't think there's an appetite in Plimpton to regionalize.
Sorry, I think we need to kind of get back on the same.
All right. Sorry, I just...
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, and so the question I would pose to the committee is, do we cut some and feel like that increases our chance of an override? And, I mean,
I think it's reasonable to cut the 210. That's my thought. Everything else...
At that point, though, it's not really affecting it much, that it's not affecting the override much. So it's like, at that point, why not just keep the 210 and ask the town for all of it? We cut 870-something thousand last year.
Why would you do that?
I mean...
Well, it's just something we can vote on if someone, I mean, do you have that information by any chance yet? Okay. Because that also impacts, if we have money, we can move to next year, possibly.
Sorry, I want to interrupt, but the kindergarten, you guys brought it up last month. I know this isn't open, and I'm very sorry, but I'm trying to help.
You mean charging for kindergarten?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
We will get to there, because it's on my list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I want to move the meeting along.
Let's.
Okay, so we noticed at Silver Lake, they did not have to, they were able to make ends meet, so to speak, because they started charging for extracurriculars a little bit more and for parking a little bit more.
They also used, they used like $1.2 million in E&D. So the difference, because they're a regional district, is that when they have excess funds, it goes into their E&D fund. And if we have excess funds, it goes back to the town. So they have E&D funds that they certified that they use to cover the difference. And that's why they didn't have to make any.
Right, so what I'm suggesting is, can we?
If I
Yep.
may, their E&D also comes from a revenue source.
Right.
Right.
I forgot about that, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
Which we can't guarantee will continue, but the last few years has been
Right.
profitable.
So in speaking of revenue sources, can we entertain the discussion about charging for buses and charging for kindergarten to see if we can make up some revenue? We already opened these reserve accounts in our last meeting. Can we talk about what it might look like, the cost, to get us ballpark figures?
Sarah's going to
I'm going to go back to the presentation that I gave, I believe, in December or November, I can't remember which
Well, I
one.
know you gave us like ranges of what towns charge, correct? Is that what-
Yep.
For
Yep.
buses that were.
And again, remember, there are no guarantees because it will all be dependent upon whether or not people choose to participate in full day and pay for full day, and whether there's enough people interested in full day to open up enough classrooms. How much you decide to charge for full day K. You have to offer half-day K. You can't charge for that. And the same will be true, relatively true for busing as well, for how much you charge and whether or not people choose to participate. We can't promise you that it will be successful.
But if we decide to charge for full-day kindergarten and don't have enough interest, we would end up with half-day kindergarten, correct?
So just to be clear, we can't, so currently we have full day K.
Right.
We can't just start charging for full day K. So you would need to make the move to half day K and then offer full day K as a pay for
So we'd have to make a motion to move to half-day kindergarten and then from there, we could offer full-day kindergarten.
Yes.
Okay.
And do we know what other towns in our area are charging for full-day kindergarten?
Approximately $3,000, $3,500 for full day K.
And if we had class sizes of 21, say, right? That could cover a salary if enough people were in. But either way, we would be either moving to half-day kindergarten, which would save money because we wouldn't need as many teachers, or we can see if the town has the appetite to pay for full-day kindergarten, which would then fund the positions. But it would also be uncertain year to year, correct?
Correct.
I think we should make the motion to move to half-day.
The other question I have is adding midday bus, if we move to, do you know what the expense of that would be? How many buses typically are run for half-day or used to? Does anyone remember?
I believe there was, so half-day kindergarten in the days that Emily and Kate went there was a dividing line, Route 58, and one side of Route 58 went in the morning and one side went in the afternoon, and it was 2 buses to do the pickup and drop off because you're only doing half the town.
Okay, so it would be 2 buses in the middle of the day that we're adding, which would be, if it's $38,000 per bus, then that's, I'm trying to do math, 76,000?
I'm looking for the quote from the bus company because it wasn't the regular full-day bus.
Because we'd be cutting teachers but then adding bus cost. So I'm not sure.
And can we do that with sharing, like, Silver Lake buses, basically? So it's like Silver Lake's already, they start earlier already, so do we have time to do that? Does the bus even have time to go do that? We could also go
It would have to be two
Silver Lake
separate
and
buses, that's why we'd have to pay for them.
November 25th.
So I mean, this is why it's such a hard decision, like, it's, yes?
So the bus fee analysis back in November contains the information. Sarah is logging in now.
Okay.
But it was presented to the school committee.
I just don't remember all the details.
I don't remember the numbers either.
It's in the November 25th school committee folder. While you're looking at that, I'm just looking for the email where the bus company gave me a projected cost.
Bus fee analysis, right?
Well, I mean, how many students ride a bus currently? Because I was also just dividing the 38,000 by, I would assume, like, the students. Can you do it that way, or?
Well, you can't because not every student can be charged to ride a bus because it's within a certain radius.
Right.
So that's why this chart here, slide 5, talks about a potential fee. And based upon how much participation you get, how much revenue you'll get. So if you get 75 participation rate and charged 500, you should be able to make the cost
Of the actual bus.
of a single bus. But that's only if 75% participate.
Right. And we have to
The
provide
bus company told me that they would run either 2 to 3 buses, and the rate would be somewhere between $85 and $125 a day, depending on the distance the bus ran. So if you picked $100 times 180 days, we're looking at $10,000 per bus. So if they had to run 3 buses, it would be approximately $30,000 additional to have midday runs.
Okay.
What was the number for, that we would make, don't they just negate each other? The cost of the additional
No,
bus?
if it would, I mean, if the additional buses would be 30,000 in the worst
was the
case
other?
scenario, then it would be different than, like, I thought they would just charge us for the full bus amount.
Yeah. But what was the potential amount of revenue from charging for kindergarten? Like, I know we can't know because it would be based on how many elect to do it, but
It was $300 to $3,500, right, per student?
Yeah.
Per full day for the year.
I mean, either way, we're looking at possible staff cuts, so I don't know if the best decision, if we're going to cut it all, would be to have our class sizes in a few grades be a little bit larger, or gamble with kindergarten, like
Kindergarten's
thinking
a
out
little too
loud
much of a gamble.
So,
I just don't think it's fair and equitable to have parents have to pay for a full day. I just feel like it's going to be a real disadvantage to those students. And it's an unfair advantage because it's an economic problem for the family. And then they're getting less education than other students. And I would not vote to charge for kindergarten. So I'm just putting it out there to my fellow committee members. If you'd make that motion, I don't think it's fair and equitable for children to have some parents can afford to pay for it and some parents can't. I would not support that.
And if a family has twins, everything goes up, double.
Well, you also have an equity because Kingston and Plimpton or not.
Half day.
Right.
Have we gotten that? Okay, thanks.
So at the end of the year, we can move things around, but right now, as it stands, a safe amount would say $200,000.
Okay. So we could safely say we can push.
That's what she's saying, safely $200,000.
Okay, so that brings us down in what we would need to cut then, if we're gonna cut it all.
So I would like to,
Yeah, we did.
so I would like to move that the superintendent be directed to reduce the amount of circuit breaker funding for the FY25 budget by $200,000, which is the projected excess. In the event more funds are needed, the school committee will be notified and another vote taken.
How would I do that?
So just so I understand, if we had a out-of-district placement,
Come up between now and then.
You'd bring it back.
You would
to
bring
the
it back
committee.
to us. We would possibly move money again.
Yep.
that would not, however, necessarily be on time for town meeting. Right.
Oh, man. The gambles.
I just can't promise that. I don't want to mislead you.
No, it's important.
So couldn't that say that we can end up using that, let's say we ignore that money for now and we have to reduce staff, can't they then be brought back afterwards? If that money then becomes available, we can bring that stuff back after?
So you can pay for staff under the 240 grant excess. That's where the excess needs to be, is under the 240 grant and not circuit breaker.
But it's special ed staff, not,
Special education staff.
right.
But here's another little piece. The question would become, that I would be asking, is if we do that and we fund the special education staff or paras or whatever underneath that 240 grant, does that increase, our spending for special education so that we can now reap the benefit of the next year's grant? So it's kind of like a buffer. If you reinvest that money into staffing, it's going to raise your special education budget for the year, so that when we go to do maintenance of effort next year, we're spending more money in special education, and you'll likely make maintenance of effort.
For next year,
For
not
next
for
year.
this year.
Right.
Okay.
We made it for this year already. We are worried about next year, and that would be approximately another $180,000. So it's a gamble, but it's a gamble that has a little bit of a...
So I just want to make sure I understand. The gamble is to hold this 200,000, and that could put us in a point where we're spending more and meeting that. Okay.
And then that would open up the idea that we could very likely make the maintenance of effort.
But the gamble being that if that funds are needed by the end of this fiscal year, that's going to take away from the
You'd have
budget
to go
next
back
year.
and-
Yeah.
So it's either win-win or no. Right?
So what happens, let's just be, what if we take that risk and the budget's passed at town meeting, then after the budget's passed, we get this late placement out of district?
Or someone moves in.
Correct.
Have until April 1st.
Right, so, but our town meeting will be done by then. Sarah?
We are required, the school committee is required by law to make accommodations to the budget for any known placements up until June 30th. So if on June 28th, a family moves in with 5 out-of-district placement children, we would know about it, and we would need to make adjustments to the FY26 budget to accommodate for that.
But
they
April
moved
1st is
in-
the cutoff date for move-in. So what the state tells us is any move-ins after April 1st, we're not really responsible for. The previous district is responsible for that.
So it sounds like, we're a few weeks away from.
April 1st is only...
It's a big, well, it's
3 weeks.
Everybody can look it up.
Working on it right now.
John, is that what you're looking at, Brennan? Because April 1st is only in 20 days.
But also, we also have the tuitions for the vocational tech that we could possibly gamble to put back in the budget too, which, I mean, that's the hard thing, is there's so many moving parts and moving targets that,
Not collaborative, but private schools.
Right, private schools, yes, collaboratives, no.
Yeah.
Sorry about
What was that?
The move-in law, which is the April 1st deadline, is only for private schools, not for public schools. Meaning, if we have a student that goes to a collaborative that moves in after April 1st, we would be responsible for that tuition.
Those are the lesser tuition. But you would also have extraordinary funds following year. If we have 5 students move in and they all happen to go to a collaborative and they all need transportation, the following year when they offer extraordinary circuit breaker relief,
we could apply for those.
we could apply for those and that would be another benefit because we're not going to get that this year, right?
Okay.
A lot of moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts. I'm trying to think if we,
I like the gamble of the 200.
but then I was wondering though, if we do that, but we also cut the 200, then we're like covered, but then if we have it, we don't have to do it. Does that make sense? With them, we're double covered.
Well,
So if
no,
we gamble on the
because,
200, but also cut 200,
so cut 410?
yeah, that's 400,000. And if, it seems like the least painful, that's the only way I can describe it, the least painful cut is the 200,000. But then we're gambling, and then if we get it, then we can put those back, and we'll know by the time, you know, like, we'll know, right?
So you're only cutting you're going to cut the 210?
But also
And hope-
try to freeze the,
And hope that
right,
we can use the circuit breaker that's being frozen this year.
For next-
Assuming special education isn't going to need $200,000 in expenses before the end of the school year, and apply it to the 210,000 that was cut.
right.
Can we only cut the 200 that we're gambling and not cut the other 210? And then if we end up gambling that and it ends up being a problem, then we cut the 210?
You can do whatever you want.
Oh.
But you
Well,
have to
what's
get everybody else to agree. Or a majority.
Well, because we were originally saying, let's cut the 210, right?
Right.
That's-
I think-
and then
I think
we weren't
that-
going to try to push too far into it. But what if we already had got, I don't want to say a free 200, but we're gambling 200. In
Well-
the worst case scenario, we don't get that 200, then we'll cut that other 200. But we're now, with that, we're keeping all of our staff.
But also keep in mind, if we gamble correctly on this 200, then there is a possibility we will now qualify for this IDEA grant, which is another 158, if I'm,
700, let me see what last.
that we would have in our bucket.
Yeah, 182 last
So I mean,
year.
we're still cutting something at the 200. It's still 200. It's still
Well, it would mean the override would be reduced by 200,000.
Still
210,000, right. That's what I'm saying. The request from our budget, we would request less than an override. But,
So instead of doing 400, what I'm saying is, because we originally, I
well, that's
don't
what
know
I'm
how much
saying.
further we were going to
We
go.
could cut the 210 from the current budget with the hope that we'll be able to apply those funds, because that we'll be able to save those money and apply those funds for next year. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Okay. Does it make sense to you?
No,
It
it
doesn't make
does.
sense to me. I don't know why.
One more time.
Okay, if we cut the 210, the first kind
The
of.
first or second
first
tier of cuts.
Yeah.
For teachers.
And then our gamble pays off and we don't have to end up using those funds, then we will have those funds for next year. So we won't actually have to cut them. We'll be using it from our own budget moving forward. Does that make sense?
So you're still
I don't-
saying that my motion would be my motion?
We'd have to
Yes,
make
'cause, I
your
mean,
motion
eh.
and we'd have to make a motion to pass a budget that's 210,000 less. Correct? Right, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But that's still saying we have to ask the town for over $1 million. Right?
It's true.
And it's like the grocery store or whatever, is it $5.99 or is it $6? I just feel like if we're well over $1 million, I fear that, and this is why I voted no last time, I fear that if we ask for too much, we'll get nothing. I feel like we have to meet in the middle and say we did what we could possibly do. And if we don't go to the townspeople and honestly say we cut what we could to still keep the doors open, to still have some teaching and learning happening here, then they're just going to say,
It's not acceptable.
then they're just going to say, then we won't pass the override and we will take the deepest cuts that we saw up here. Worst case scenario will be the reality. I get the wish, but I also see the reality. So I just think 1.1 million is going to be a tough thing to pass.
I don't disagree, but
Well, then the other option is to do like the cuts at 1.5 and hope that we can get that 200 back, which would mean we'd be able to add some back. That would be the other option, I think, like as far as, in our discussion here. To do the, not the tier, well,
can we make a motion to do what Dr. Panarisi, the 200, can we like?
I've already made a motion, so I just need a
Someone
second.
needs a
Second.
Okay.
What was, can we just hear the motion?
Yeah.
So I move that the superintendent be directed to reduce the amount of the circuit breaker funding for the FY25 budget by $200,000, which is the projected excess. In the event that more funds are needed, the school committee will be notified and another vote taken.
Second.
Okay. We'll do roll call.
Sorry, just still like quick discussion. So Dr. Prue, you feel that that's acceptable and that's something that you can do? I don't want to make a motion to tell you to do something that you can't do, so I just want to make sure you're okay with
Without
that.
having seen the spreadsheet from the bookkeeper, texted, if the special education director and the business director think that this is feasible, without having seen the spreadsheet from the bookkeeper, then
I think that if there's a lot to win if you take the gamble. I don't have anything on the horizon that would make me say, we need to be cautious here, we need to be conservative. I think it's pretty safe to say, well, we're just going to take 200 of that excess that we have and apply it, to make sure our budget is a little bit better presentation-wise. It also, like I said, is going to look towards, if we do get extra costs, it's extraordinary relief. We have a better shot at making maintenance of effort. So if we're going to gamble, I'm a gambler, so I would say yes, and then we can always come back because we know that we did our due diligence and we made the best effort that we could and make the best decisions with the facts that we have right now. And right now, we have facts that tell us there's $200,000 that we could apply to next year's budget that we can use to not only help the budget, but also beef up the idea of what we're spending so we can get another $182,000 like we got this year. So in my book,
3 teachers plus.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
So that still means there's 190,000, correct?
Correct.
That still leaves a little bit more, but that's now your buffer between now and the end of the year, and I would not.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying there is some wiggle room there.
Right, that's why I think conservatively, the 200 is a good amount.
All right, let's have a vote. Is everyone done? Okay, Katie?
Yep.
Lori?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jessica? Yes. And I'm a yes.
So I'd also like to make a motion to increase the FY budget by $200,000, which is the 200 we just moved. So moving it from 25 to 26.
Actually, you want to decrease it.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, decrease.
I was like,
No, decrease.
So when we get to the point where we're going to make a motion
has to be the total amount.
There's going to be some offsets to the motion, and part of it is going to be the FY26 anticipated circuit breaker, and part of it now will be FY25 carryover circuit breaker. So it doesn't need a separate motion.
Thank you.
Do we still want to discuss bus fees?
I was just gonna say the bus payback fees. I think we should move into that. Can we do that?
Yeah. Is there any way we can put that up on the screen? Everyone can see it?
Bus fee analysis up on the screen.
It's from the November 25th meeting.
Jill, we can't charge for buses to people that live within a certain...
Yes, that's in the bus fees analysis.
Okay.
And also, if someone's on free and reduced lunch, we can't charge for the bus, right?
Correct.
Correct.
With lunches being free, like, there's no cost at this time, how do we determine if somebody's on free and reduced lunch?
They still have to do the application.
Fill out the forms?
There's still an application process.
We still have ways of knowing our low income status.
Okay.
Would it be too much of a gamble to also take the third out of district placement and add that back into the budget at this point?
The vocational one.
The vocational one, sorry, my part. The vocational placement.
We have two when we
But
budget.
you net more cost if people move in. Correct, Sarah?
I don't think that would be too much of a gamble. We're talking about, hang on for a minute.
They only have 5 days to apply for it, right?
But they have until April 1st.
They have to
notify us.
first to let us know, so there could be students out there that have applied that we just don't know yet.
How much would that?
Done that in the past.
How much would we put back in? If we were to do that? Or take off the amount of the override?
$38,600.
Okay, so we've, 38,600?
That's tuition and transportation.
Okay.
Combined.
All right.
For one.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite for me to make a motion on that 38?
Or would that be part of the total? I don't know.
I think that's part of the total.
See if we make it part of the total.
Okay.
Can you,
Just trying to
can
save
you
money.
forward it to the ones that-
Agree?
Anyway.
So the only people that would be potentially able to, this is, I mean, this chart is basically showing what we can and can't, you know, what.
Right. This is so hard when you have no idea how many people would take a bite at this apple.
That's what I'm saying, like, I would say, like, anything, maybe you could count on 50% participation rate, but then if you have people with multiple children.
Yeah. Right.
And, you know, they're gonna be like, I'm just gonna drive, I don't wanna pay, you know. Because it's not that large of our population that's eligible, like, that would be, I don't know. I'm not sure the savings would be.
What about the next slide that has the,
So is it between 1 and 2 miles? Or is it like if they're less than 2 miles, we have to provide or we don't have to provide
2
transportation?
miles and beyond, we're required by
2 miles and
law
beyond,
to
okay.
provide transportation.
But if we required it for anyone less than 2 miles, this is what we're looking at, right? Like if, I mean, this is the,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry, I know this isn't open, but just, does this include any percentage of like folks who would have free or low cost?
No, this means like of the people that we could charge, if 100% participated, this is this is how much we would get.
At full cost, though?
What?
At full cost?
Yeah, at full cost.
That we have about 30 to 40% of our students who maybe would qualify for less. Remember
So
on
that, Kane, can you go back to slide 3? So these are the actual numbers that I presented in November. These are the students that are at Halifax Elementary now. There are 318 students. 61 of them live within 1 mile, and 142 live between 1 and 2 miles. 318 are beyond 2 miles. So the 318 beyond 2 miles, we would have to provide transportation free of charge. That's state statute. So out of that within 1 mile group, 18 of them are ineligible to be charged for transportation. Out of the 142 that are between 1 and 2 miles, 34 of them are ineligible to be charged for transportation.
So you're talking about 106 students.
151 that we could possibly charge.
Am I misunderstanding that? Between 1 and 2 miles?
Because there's so many we have to provide transportation. for.
Oh, I
We can't
see.
charge
I'm
them.
sorry. We have to add the top two, the two, yeah,
Add the
sorry.
two top and then
My bad.
subtract the bottom ones, and that's 151 students.
Yeah.
Times 500.
Something we may have forgotten from the fall as well is the management of this, which I believe you discussed with the town.
So this is something I talked to the town about. This would, we don't have the capacity in the business office to collect fees and manage. This would be something that would go, a revolving account would be set up with the town, and then this would come as a bill, just like your recycling bill. We used to get a recycling bill, or your water bill, or, so the school committee would need to determine how much the fee would be, and also any late fee that would be charged.
How are other towns how are other towns charging for the bus when they're out of the 2 miles?
What do you mean?
Like they can't.
Nobody can charge for students beyond 2 miles from the school.
I did email the town and ask for a revolving account to be opened, so.
So is there a way that we can set it up so that it's not so, I don't know, I just keep thinking like the cost to a parent is in the balancing everything else. And if you have multiple kids, like, can we give them a cap if they have, a certain number of kids? Can we break up the payments where they'd pay it, maybe 3 payments a year? I don't know.
Well, and
Is it even worth it?
well, that's what I'm
It's a
saying,
lot.
like, it's not, I'm not sure the savings are worth all of, and I don't want to make anyone's, I said this in the meeting before, I don't want to make it hard for anyone to get their children to school. And I'm not sure that the potential savings, especially since it's unknown, people might just drive their children.
I think it's really important if we are making decisions like this to, and it's something we can talk about at a future meeting, I really feel like we need an FAQ that is presented at town meeting. These are the things that we talked about. This is the reason that we didn't pursue it. Because you're going to have a lot of people that won't have listened to our meetings and will be raising their hand and asking about bus fees.
Yes.
So just again, for transparency with my fellow members, again, I would not vote for charging for the bus. It's the same equity issue. So you've got one family that's, maybe they don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, so they're not going to get that free ride to school, but maybe they're struggling. And now they have to pay for their child to go to school. But someone that lives a half a mile away or 20 yards away that just made that line doesn't have to. And I just want to be comfortable with that. Such a small number, 150 kids out of the whole population of school. We're going to charge this 150 to get to school, but nobody else has to pay. And for the amount of money that we're getting out of it, I'm just not comfortable.
I agree with you. I agree with you about that. So then again, the question is, if we cut more, does it make it over? Because I would rather, my concern is I don't want to have to go through to all the cuts. And if cutting a little bit more and having a little bit taken off and telling the town we are going as lean as we can, but this is what we need. You know, we've really made an effort. Like we've made our class sizes pretty much equal in all the grades at this, if we ask for another reduction that's under $1 million of an override, would that help it pass more? You know?
Yeah, and so I spoke with Board of Selectmen, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, right? So say whatever we propose tonight for a number, if it doesn't pass at town, then it automatically defaults to all of it, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to lose everything. Right. So we have to try to get the town to come on our side, be like, please, like we cut what we could. Please, can you please give us this? But if we go to the town and say, we didn't cut anything and we just want you to pass it all, and if they say no, then it's automatic. It's not on us. It's not on anything we pass tonight. It's automatic tier 4, correct?
That's exactly what happens, and that's why I think, we're taking the gamble on the 200,000, but if we cut an additional 200,000 and ask for less than $1 million, I think we might have a better chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should propose to cut 410.
I think we can, well, if we do, because we have the 200 that we're probably getting back.
Yep.
And then we have the 38,600. So if we do 210 plus 200 plus the 38,600, it's 448,000.
Yeah.
I guess we would need language to make that motion. I would make the motion.
It's on the last slide.
Right, but we need the numbers, right?
I will give you the numbers.
Thanks.
I have a dumb question, and excuse me, it's 8:48 at night. So we have a retirement this year that we already know about. So obviously we're not going to hire for that position. So if we cut 3 teachers, do we only have to cut 2?
We would do cuts through attrition first, but you have to keep in mind that, say, for example, you have a teacher in a certain grade level that's retiring. If that's not one of the positions, then that grade level would be filled and something else would be cut.
But technically kind of yes then, right? The answer is almost yes at that point. So if we're losing a grade 2 teacher,
and we're not replacing, we're not going back.
So we're not like getting rid of 3 teachers at that point. We're getting rid of 2. Is that
Right, because we would just be shifting one of the others that we were losing into that.
I mean, sounds better. It's not like getting rid of 2 teachers. One's already they're voluntarily leaving us.
But the class size is still going to grow because you're not replacing that teacher.
Right.
Only in the grades that we talked about.
Right, and those grades are
much smaller than the others.
I mean, I don't want to do it, trust me, but it's a better case scenario to not have to get rid of 3 teachers.
Well, we're trying to make the best of the horrible.
Right. I mean, it's just, in my brain, it sounds better.
I know.
We're not hiring 3 teachers.
Actually, I have questions from the school committee first.
Yep.
So just to be clear, before I give you numbers, I want to make sure I'm giving you exactly what you're looking for. So you're taking the level service budget after the update to the shared cost. From that level service budget, we are subtracting out $38,600, which is the out-of-district tuition and transportation for one student. And we're subtracting out this $210,000.
Plus the 200,000.
That goes somewhere else. So
Okay,
is
got
this?
it.
Yes.
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 So when we go here to the motion, somebody's going to have to take notes. So the first line is going to be $7,648,313. That appears in the first line and the third line.
For our secretary, can you say that figure again?
$7,648,313.
Thank you.
In the middle of the slide, where the $132,705 is, cross that out. That would be $387,576.
And that additional amount represents the 200 and the out-of-district vocational.
No. The
Sorry.
out-of-district vocational was already taken out.
Okay, sorry.
So that additional amount is the $132,705 FY26 anticipated circuit breaker, the so you have to add in $200,000 of FY25 carryover circuit breaker, and then that's the REAP grant, the $54,871.
Okay.
Okay. And then you're approving the final expenditures for the school year, $8,035,889. $889.
I'll give a crack at it.
Okay, that's the 210, the 200, and the,
Okay, I will move that Halifax School Committee approve $7,648,313 as the fiscal 2026 local education budget operating budget, and further that the total appropriation of $7,648,313 is in compliance with the Education Reform Acts of 1993 and recommended by the superintendent of schools. And further, the school committee directs the superintendent to allocate the following additional funding sources, which total $387,576.
I thought it was 86.
76.
76, thank you.
Fiscal year 26 anticipated circuit breaker special education reimbursement of $132,705. Anticipated fiscal year 26 grant and revolving account funding totaling $54,871. The final approved expenditures for the schools will be $8,035,889.
You need the $200,000 FY25 carryover circuit breaker.
That's not in the anticipated, isn't that?
We just added it.
That's in the total $387,576.
But I need to add the 200,000 into the circuit breaker amount.
Or you can say FY26 circuit breaker is what you said, and FY25 carryover.
And FY25 carryover of 200,000. Okay. Oh. Can I get is there a second?
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Katie?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jessica? Yes. And I'm a yes. All right.
Can you
Now-
clarify what you're voting on? I'm sorry, I'm genuinely confused.
We voted on reducing what we're asking for the override, basically by, sorry, $448,000 with the idea that we're going to get 200,000 carried over for next year, and with the possibility of cutting a couple of teacher positions because we have a retirement this year. That's what our budget voted. All right. All right. Now we get to have the rest of the meeting. Yeah. Okay, so now if we can review and go out the regular minutes of February 10th. Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Yeah. That was very easy. All right.
Past my bedtime.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the next thing on our agenda is the HTA sixth grade celebration and possible votes. Does anyone want to make a motion to change anything about the sixth grade graduation or contract?
Is this part of this or this part of this?
No one? All right, I will move on. Then as far as the full regionalization discussion, I think all we need to do is assign someone to. So is that something I do because it's like a subcommittee, or do we need to vote?
You can ask for a volunteer, or you can appoint.
Okay. Do I have a volunteer? Lori. Okay. Perfect. I will appoint Lori. And then there's a discussion of the advertising policy and possible vote, which I don't want to rush through this discussion. Is it possible to put it on next? Okay. So is that okay if we move that to next meeting? And then approval of bill schedule. Sarah?
Our meetings are currently out of sync with the warrant cycle. There was a warrant that was due to the town on March 3rd that went out as a single signature warrant. It was for $163,130.63. The next warrant is due to the town on April 7th. So again, out of sync with our meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any school committee correspondence or reports. Is there any, and I'm not aware of any new business or future agenda items you can let me know about by email or, all right, so the committee policy, we're gonna table till next time, but they haven't met either. Negotiations, I don't think we met between the last meeting and this meeting, correct? That was before the last meeting, yeah, that's what I thought, okay. Pilgrim Area Collaborative?
Did not meet.
Okay. Youth and Rec?
Okay, you ready, Sue? It's a long one.
Oh, can we truncate?
I will do my best.
Okay.
So on the 21st of April, the gym will be sanded down and relined with 2 pickleball courts at no cost to the town or school, as it's paid by a grant procured by Halifax Youth Rec. Town travel basketball is winding down. The gym was used 7 days a week, and so that's a great success. The town is prepping for the 23rd annual holiday egg hunt. It will be held April 12th. They're hiding over 300 eggs. 3,000 eggs. 3,000. It's late. It's late. They are trying to squeeze in another dance for 4th and 5th grade between basketball and April vacation. They are also trying to get money to repair the outdoor basketball courts and tennis courts, but at this time, the cost to repair is out of reach. And the after-school programs continue to be a success, and thank you to the teachers who are handling that.
Okay, thank you. PTO?
They meet tomorrow via Zoom, and the last meeting, they plan to fully fund field trips this year, which is great, and that's all via their fundraising. And the new fundraisers they have coming up are a Cupcake Charlie fundraiser, which they haven't done before. Their last biggest fundraiser besides the Mingland Jingle was the Harlem Wizards, so they're using all that fundraising money and definitely funding the field trips this year. And again, they have a meeting via Zoom tomorrow, and big topic there is book fair.
Can I ask a question about PTO? Earlier this calendar year, this fiscal year, it was proposed that PTO was going to donate some funds. And we had said, well, we need more feedback, where we're going to allocate this money, and then it was dropped. So my question is can some of that money, again, be applied to our budgets so that some of this is less?
I did speak with the PTO president, and I actually forgot to bring it up in the budget session, and I apologize. But they said that they would feel comfortable possibly contributing about $40,000 a year that maybe we could apply to curriculum. But we would just have to vote for that, correct? And then to apply it, but, or would we say
You would
we're...
have to vote to accept. It'd have to be a proposal or an offer from the Plimpton Teachers Association. Halifax.
No, I know.
Community.
I know there was a PTO representative here earlier. I don't know if she's still here. Oh, is it you?
So, no, I'm not on the board, but I'm at a lot of things, and I know that the PTO is excited to do what they can to help, but they can't do certain things such as some staff positions. So they're open to any discussion.
So the professional development, you could, or curriculum.
That line item, or...
You could accept to use it towards those line items to help defray the overall budget costs, but you need to have an actual offer on the table to vote.
Okay, so we could possibly do that for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Anything else? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was done, sorry.
Okay, all right. The budget didn't meet. Admin review? They didn't meet, did they?
No meeting.
DEIB?
No meeting.
Okay. Union 31, we did have a meeting and we voted the shared cost budget.
And we have another meeting coming up in April.
Yep. We have another meeting coming up in April. Okay. Principal report?
All right. School council met last Wednesday, the 26th, and discussed the budget and the handbook items. Both one that came up for the tiered focus monitoring and the draft that's with the attorney that we're still working on. The handbook, what we went through last time, we pulled out that what came up in our tiered focus monitoring review was from the Department of Ed. It was a review of documents and staff interviews indicated that the Halifax Elementary Code of Conduct is missing the following requirements in our handbook. And it was a complete manifestation determination procedures for students with disabilities, and the principal's responsibility to ensure adequate provisions have been made for students' safety and transportation prior to removing a student from school on an emergency basis for a disciplinary offense. So in our handbook, we had proposed to remove pages 34 to 40, which were strike through, and then we were adding pages 40 to 49. And it's complete because what we had in there was incomplete, which is what came up in the TFM.
So I noticed when I was reviewing the handbook that there are two errors that I'm hoping we can correct. So on page 42, the last paragraph, it reads, unless one or more of the following 12 Kingston Elementary and Kingston Intermediate Schools apply. So that needs to be changed to Halifax. Also on page 50, the second paragraph, it reads, measures be applied to 17 Kingston Elementary and Kingston Intermediate students without disabilities. So that also needs to be changed to Halifax.
Page 50, you said?
50?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, second paragraph.
Got it.
And if you want to find it easy, you can just do a find and type in Kingston, you'll see a couple that refer to the address of the central office, so ignore those, it's the last few.
You got it.
Are there any other changes to highlight?
That's it.
Do we want to make a motion to accept the changes in the student handbook? Or it's the handbook, yeah, it is, that's what it is. Okay, the student handbook as presented and amended by Katie.
So I'll make the motion since I'm asking for amendments. So I'll make a motion to approve the student and parent handbook as presented with the amendments mentioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone not?
I just didn't know if we had discussion on that or no.
Oh, what?
You
You
want
wanna
to
have
say?
discussion?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, yeah, it's all right. Is it, it's okay, I don't have to.
No, we can have
Okay,
discussion,
all right.
can't we?
We already voted, but.
Yeah, yes, that's fine, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Sarah?
So when I prepare myself for the meetings, every time I go through the financial report that's in the folder, and I pick out anything that is of note, and then I write a script for myself of all the things I'm going to talk about, and then I go back and I highlight anything on the script that is new from this meeting, that is not new from, that hasn't been said before. I want you to know that everything on my script for tonight is something we've already talked about in previous meetings when going through, but I will gladly go through the financial report with you page by page if you'd like.
Okay. Does anyone have questions?
So then the only thing I will say is that there is about $391,000 in the operating circuit breaker revolving in 240 grants. We've already talked about this tonight, but that was what was presented to me prior to the meeting. The next item, grants and donations. We don't have any new grants or donations at this time. Again, as we spoke about earlier tonight, $54,871 has been designated to Halifax for next year, and we voted that as part of our budget. The last thing I have is the adult meal price increase. This has absolutely nothing to do with any type of budgetary issues. The food service director went through an audit process with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and one of the things that was mentioned is that the amount that was being charged for adult meals was not in alignment with the federal formula for adult meal prices. So in order to move in alignment with the federal formula, the meals as of August 2025 are going to move from $4 plus tax, which was $4.28, up to $5.25 with tax. That'll be $5.62.
Do we have to vote on it, or it's just informational?
Informational.
Okay.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Dr. Clifford?
The only thing that is new is that we, on March 6th, created a district literacy plan. The district literacy leadership team got together and spent the whole day working with Hill for Literacy. We created a 3-year plan, and that's in draft form right now, and it's going to be shared with all of the faculty and staff, and then I'll bring a final version of that to this committee.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else, or did we cover everything? Covered everything. Excellent, okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we should entertain having another meeting at the end of the month, or halfway between this meeting and our next, should we need to vote on any further changes. Just entertaining the idea.
I think if that...
Jill's looking scared.
I think I think if a need comes up, we can schedule a meeting.
Okay.
But I don't want to just put one on the books.
I mean, we're not going to know anything until, like, April 1st is the big date,
April
right?
1st is a big date. We're meeting with the town on, well, we're meeting with Finance Committee on, I mean, this isn't in the dates to remember, but we're meeting with Finance Committee on the 17th. And then final answers from the town we'll receive by March 25th. Is that correct, Jonathan? Right? So.
It's not a lot of time to change anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much. All right.
You're not going to know about circuit breaker, you're not going to know about April 1st out-of-district vocational.
Okay. Just
right.
throwing it out there to make sure.
And hey, you know, all ideas are good ideas, right? All right, dates to remember, March 20th, 2025 is early release in grades K through 6 for parent-teacher conferences. April 10th, 2025 is a joint meeting at the high school. April 14th is our next Halifax School Committee meeting, and that is our school choice meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, seeing as everyone else wants to stay.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.